All right, there was a movie that came out a couple weeks ago. It's a slasher film. And it's a different type of slasher film. So in a non-spoiler way, let's talk about In a Violent Nature. So In a Violent Nature came out in theaters, and now it's going to be released on Shudder. I don't know if it's on Shudder yet, but it's very soon to be on Shudder. And I will applaud this movie for being a different take and approach to your typical slasher thing. Now, I watched this at the movie theater because I opened up my AMC app. There was nothing coming out that I knew I wanted to see. And I saw this and saw it was a new horror film. And even though, in hindsight, because after I watched this movie, I had a chat with Verno and I had another chat with Dylan. And Dylan was like, I mentioned this movie. I was like, you know what? I vaguely remember you mentioning this movie, but I watched it without knowing anything about it, right? I went to the theater. I was very excited. There was a lot of people in the theater for a not heard of slasher on a Sunday afternoon. There was a lot of people watching this movie. And I'm kind of disappointed with it, y'all. I found the movie to be rather boring, kind of silly. So here's the whole vibe of the whole movie. It is your typical slasher, very much influenced by Jason, and it is all from the killer's perspective. So it's a Jason-type figure. He's a disfigured individual who was killed under tragic circumstances, who has been resurrected from the dead to wreak vengeance on anybody who comes near. It's involving a locket and all that kind of stuff. And when I say it's from his perspective, I really mean that. Now, we do get some gnarly kills, but most of the movie is just following this guy from behind. And I'm not even kidding. It's called an ambient slasher. Most of this movie is just this dude walking and us seeing him from behind. But, like I said, there are some gnarly kills. There are other characters in the movie, but they don't really stand out. They don't really have any kind of development, and they are inconsequential to the movie overall. So what I liked about the movie. Here's what I liked. I liked that it was a bold, different take on a slasher film. Now, many times, me and my homies, me and us here, we have had this conversation. Wouldn't it be cool to see a Michael Myers movie from Michael's perspective? Wouldn't it be cool to see Friday the 13th from Jason's perspective? Actually, no. Because then you lose all character development. There is no character development in this movie. There are characters in this movie, and you get brief hints here and there, but for the most part, it's just us following this dude behind him. There's no musical score in the movie. They call it an ambient slasher because you hear the footsteps, you hear all the gnarly kills, but structurally, this movie's like an hour and a half, and it felt like I was in that theater for 4 hours. Now, I know a lot of people have been liking this movie. A lot of people are really liking the different approach to the slasher film. I applaud that, but I don't think it necessarily works. There's probably a reason we haven't gotten a Friday the 13th movie from Jason's perspective. And if we did, there would at least be slight character development, some nudity, some sex, maybe some more over-the-top kills, and some music to kind of break up the monotony. This movie felt monotonous to me. It just kept going and going. And then the final act has this like 15-minute section where you're just like, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. Nothing fucking happens. Nothing fucking happens. I am not even kidding when I tell you that probably 30% of the runtime of this movie is just you behind a dude walking through the fucking woods. It's pretty fucking boring. It's boring. And I was high as shit when I watched it. So I shouldn't have been bored. That should have been cool. Now, one other positive about the movie is the cinematography. It looks great. It's done in 4:3, which to me, I don't know. I haven't heard the director or anything talk about it. But to me, it seems like he's going for that like VHS kind of vibe. That like old school kind of vibe. Like here's like an old school slash. Well, You want an old school slasher? Christmas Bloody Christmas is an old school slasher that feels modern and fun and has sex and violence and all the stuff that I love in a slasher film. This one just takes it a little bit too slow. It just drags on. And it's got some gnarly kills. There's a couple kills in there. There's one that's from the top with a rock. I like that. I laughed out loud in the super quiet fucking theater. Nobody was talking. Nobody was laughing. It was just fucking quiet, right? And when it was over, it was quiet leaving. I haven't seen a theater that quiet leaving a horror film since I first watched Blair Witch Project, right? There's one kill in particular. It's been called and labeled the yoga kill. That was fucking awesome, but also at the same time, it was weird. It was like so over the top. It's like in this really grounded movie, you're doing this kill that's so over the top, it doesn't make sense. Like, it's like extra work. You know what I'm saying? Like, the killer would have to go through extra work to do this, to do something that's already done. And it didn't quite work for me. When the movie was over, I was really glad. I was glad that I had seen it. I was glad that I'd seen it in the theater. I do applaud that it was trying to do something different. But y'all, it was boring as shit. It was boring as shit to me. Maybe if you got a bunch of people over, you're drinking, maybe taking some shots of tequila, maybe smoking some Doge, doing all that kind of thing, and you're just chilling and doing your vibe, maybe it works then. But honestly, it did not work for me watching it in the theater. I love watching movies in the theater. I love watching horror movies in the theater. I'm glad I watched this movie. I don't feel like I wasted my money. I have an AMC A-list pass, so I get to go watch whatever I want. So I just picked it because it was a new horror movie that I'd never heard about. And I just remember being like, all right. Why are they holding that shot for so long? Is this dude just walking? And then at one point I remember being like, this dude is not just going to be walking most of this movie, right? He was walking most of the movie. Story super paper thin. So paper thin, like you can see through it, right? It's like the paper that Greg Land uses over a Penthouse magazine to draw a comic, right? It's that thin of paper. This is the plot. Some of the gore effects are cool, but a lot of the kills are just kind of like off camera and don't really work. And this is supposed to be very visceral and very brutal, and it's like making people throw up. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. The Prowler kicks this movie's ass. And The Prowler's not necessarily what I would call a good movie. You know what I'm saying? But I love The Prowler. So, yeah, In a Violent Nature, I'm going to tell y'all, it didn't quite work for me. Not something I'll own on Blu-ray. And I'll only watch it again when I'm showing it to other people to see what their reaction's going to be. I appreciate the concept. Cinematography's great. The foliage in the forest, the lights, the way they show the time of day, that stuff worked for me. There are elements of it that worked, but very few for me. Overall, most of it didn't work. I would give In a Violent Nature 2 out of 5 ya digs. If you watched In a Violent Nature, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. We'll also enter you into our 20,000 subscriber giveaway. So comment below right now. Let me know what you thought about it. In a Violent Nature. Me, didn't really work for me. I found the movie, in a word, boring as fuck. That's 3 words, but we can make it 1 when we say boring as fuck. Anyway, that's what I thought about In a Violent Nature.